Hello, I'm Sue Nelson, a science journalist and author, and welcome to the Royal Society of Chemistry series discussing chemistry and climate change as we look forward to COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference in November. For nearly 3 decades, the United Nations has been bringing together people from almost every country on Earth for global climate summits. As you'd expect from the Royal Society of Chemistry, they'll be showing that chemistry is vital for understanding and tackling climate change, with a focus on batteries and energy storage. In this series, we'll showcase chemistry's contribution to electrifying the planet's energy transition to net zero and powering new discoveries and innovations. Battery systems have great potential to broaden access to energy for education, healthcare, sanitation, and many other contributors to well-being, particularly where electricity grids are limited, expensive, and unreliable. So today we're going to discuss the opportunities and limitations of batteries in the context of global development and where science and innovation can propel them towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Joining me to discuss this is an international panel of chemistry experts, Dr. Evvy Cussen, Professor Satish Patel, Professor Shirley Meng, Professor Evvy Kartini, and Dr. Richard Wills. And they're each going to start by introducing themselves, saying where they work, and with a brief explanation of their area of expertise. Eddie, if we could start with you, please.
Yes, so I'm Dr. Evvy Cussen from the University of Sheffield, where I work in the materials department. Now, my background is in crystal chemistry and in synthesizing completely new compositions and then using adjustments to crystal structure and chemical bonding there to tweak the properties. And the properties I'm interested in for these discussions are things like fast ion conduction for all solid state electrolytes, or looking at the energy we can store in cathode materials for lithium or sodium batteries.
Thank you. Satish, if you could take over, please.
So hello, everyone. I'm Satish Patel. I'm currently a professor at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I work in a department of solid state and structural chemistry unit. So primarily the focus of research in my group is on organic semiconductors and in general materials. So we are a group of chemists. Our interest is to rationally design materials for applications for light harvesting as well as for energy storage. So in this panel, specifically my interest would be, I will discuss about advantages of a redox flow battery. And I'm looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you. Shirley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shirley Mann from University of California, San Diego. I'm a Zabel Endowed Chair Professor in Energy Technologies, and I lead a group of Laboratory for Energy Storage and Conversion. So I'm a material scientist by training, and I develop diagnostic tools to understand the degradation mechanism in lithium-ion batteries, and also help design next-generation batteries, particularly in lithium metal and solid-state batteries. Thank you.
Evvy, next.
Okay, thank you. My name is Professor Dr. Renate F Cartini. Currently, I'm the professor at the National Research Innovation Agency. As well, I'm the founder of the National Battery Research Institute and the president of the Material Research Society of Indonesia. Well, I have the current research on the nickel-based material, because Indonesia is the largest nickel in the world. And in the future, that nickel will replace the gasoline. So we believe that. So it is important for Indonesia to reach to find the resources and then to make it into the lithium battery, yes, based on the nickel resources. Besides this, I'm also the neutron scatterer, so I do the material investigation using the neutron scattering, yes, based on the based on the reactor or the spallation neutron source, because this is important to understand the inside of the lithium battery. Yes, because the only we can see the light atom with the neutron. And the other that my activity, it's recently also with this NBRI. We want to encourage the young scientists to about the research in battery technology, and also about the awareness about the sustainable development goal and renewable energy. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go now to our fifth and final member of the panel to introduce themselves, and that's Richard.
Hello, I'm Richard Wills. I'm Associate Professor at the University of Southampton in the UK. I'm a chemist by training and have spent the last 20 years looking at electrochemical energy storage devices, so batteries, fuel cells, supercapacitors. My main area of interest is split between two areas, really. For the first is looking at new battery chemistries using aqueous electrolytes. And the other area is the integration of devices into applications. So looking at the first area of new formulations and chemistries, that ranges from small format cells such as aluminium ion cells up to larger systems, including redox flow batteries. And in terms of the integration of these devices into applications, we're focusing on the automotive, maritime and grid sectors for integration of renewable energies and decarbonising transport vectors.
Excellent. Right. Well, let's get going by setting the scene. Eddie, let's start with you. What are the problems associated with renewable power that batteries can fix?
Yes, that really gets to the heart of it. I mean, I think it's interesting to think about how we currently derive power and how we store and consume energy. And it's principally around the use of hydrocarbons, whether that's fuel going into a car for transport or whether it's a gas or coal powered power station historically. And there we often take energy storage for granted. I mean, we don't think very much about the petrol tank in a car, which is essentially a glorified bucket, but that's actually storing energy for us very well. And energy storage becomes more and more important as we go to renewable sources. If we think about solar or if we think about wind, we obviously have different challenges there. The sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day, and unless you live on the equator, it doesn't shine with the same intensity all year round. Whereas here where I am in the Northern Hemisphere, we're about to enter winter, we're starting to need to heat our homes. And so our national energy demand is increasing at just the time when solar power is starting to diminish and we're leaving summer. So we need to find ways of shifting when energy is available to when energy is going to be used. And that's true for solar, it's true for wind generation of electricity. We don't have a constant incessant uniform level of wind. We wouldn't necessarily need it. So batteries really step in allowing us to time shift from when energy is available to us to when we need to be able to use energy. And that's something which we do at the moment nationally in our grid systems. We often have systems such as pumped hydro, where during low times of demand, we pump water from a lower geographical area to somewhere higher above sea level, and we let it flow back down through turbines to generate electricity. We do some of that in the UK. And it's a nice example because it illustrates how geography matters. Okay, that would not be a viable mechanism for much of the Netherlands, for example, or for areas of Bangladesh, which are flatter countries. It works very well in Scotland. It doesn't work very well in many areas of England. What we have to do with moving to renewables is what we want to do is be able to store this energy. Okay, and the things which are currently used in many of the grid systems are mechanical or electrical systems. If you think of electrical engineers and capacitors, they're brilliant at storing energy. But what we need to do as chemists is show how we can store energy over different timescales. And some things such as supercapacitors might be delivering energy over a few seconds or minutes. But for some other applications, we might want to be able to store energy in the summer when the sun is literally shining, and then be able to use it to heat our homes through a particularly cold winter's night. So in that case, we'd be looking at a 6-month time shift. And so as chemists, what we can bring to this is different electrochemical systems. We can think about different redox ion pairs. We can think about different architectures, and we can tune the chemistry so that the time that we store the energy for is inherently bound up in it. So we can optimize different things. We might optimize safety, or we might optimize efficiency, or for some applications, we might be quite happy to just optimize a very high charge or discharge rate and be prepared to sacrifice efficiency on those grounds. So chemistry has the opportunity to step in here and plug this gap, where at the moment we're using mechanical things like flywheels or pumped hydro to store energy, and we've really got to do much better at that if we're going to be able to make the most of our renewable resources available.
And so has this always been an issue in terms of the timescales that have needed to be worked around, or is this something that has sort of become more apparent as renewable energies have become more a part of our sort of energy landscape effectively?
It's something which is inherent to a grid system, or anywhere where the user doesn't also have responsibility for generating their own electricity, in which case, you know, if you live in an off-grid house where your energy storage is your controlled thing, just like your usage is, then you can make sure someone doesn't switch on the kettle at the same time you're using an electrical shower. But as soon as we have a grid system and you've separated usage from production, you have to have these very clever tricks to match it. And the national grid and grids around the country and around the world have developed this range of techniques, so pumped hydro or flywheels, which can step in at a few seconds notice, so they can smooth the transition as different power stations either increase or decrease their supply. In this country, there's a classic example of halfway through a football match, everybody goes to make a cup of tea, and we anticipate a large increase in electricity demand, and that can be timed to almost a second of when it's going to arrive. And be people who will be standing by ready to activate large electrical pieces of equipment to match that demand. So it's always been there, but we're now evolving our electricity systems very rapidly. Okay, the last time in my lifetime I can think of something like this was a decision to move away from coal, and we can think about some of the turbulent social changes which arose in developed countries as we moved away from coal. Here we're trying to move away from hydrocarbons to a renewable system, and we're trying to do it over a much condensed time scale. So there's all sorts of scientific, technological, and will be some social challenges here as well. For chemists, of course, there are opportunities to step into this space and make a useful contribution.
Thank you. Satish, you've worked on the Sunrise collaboration, which is an international solar power project aimed at bringing electricity to every part of India, as well as other renewable energy projects there. I mean, most people associate India, definitely with having lots of readily available sunshine. So why are batteries often installed alongside solar panels in rural situations?
Okay, so I resonate my thoughts with Eddie. He just now mentioned, although India is blessed with plenty of sunlight, but we do not have 24/7 sunlight. So batteries are essential component for a grid applications or off-grid applications. Essentially, you have to, you need energy. Battery is the system where you can withdraw the energy when you need it, actually. So as you mentioned clearly, India is blessed with plenty of sunlight, but batteries are sort of ubiquitous. And any part of the world, especially for the off-grid applications, you see that when you go to the off-grid applications, the weather conditions are sometimes not really, conventionally suitable. And during that time, it is important to save power and, draw the power when it is needed. So when for rural electrification, especially what happens when you go to some of the part of the India where there is absolutely no power with the grid. Okay, so there is no provision for a grid electricity. If you go for the such part of the India, and there's a large population, they do not have a basic access to the electricity. That hampers the growth of that region, especially during pandemic time. We noticed that the education is digitalized. So we have been teaching online. Okay. So the large part of the, India, they do not have access to the electricity, means they do not have access to the education. So this is essentially hamper the growth of the future, economic growth in the country. This also affect in many aspects. It is basically, there is people who lived in metros or cities and town, they do have access. Do they have access for the education? And the people who are living in a remote part of the India, they do not have basic access to the education. So this sort of difference in access to the primary requirement for the energy is going to really affect a country like India. So it's absolutely necessary when we are looking for a off-grid electricity. So primarily in Sunrise, we were involved in sort of delivering power to such part of the India. Some part of the India where we went in very rural part of the India, where we made a different size unit actually. So what we did is basically we have a different variants of unit, 1 kilowatt to up to 5 kilowatt. And we supplied the electricity for a school, for example, a very, very remote school in India, where a midday meals are prepared in a very dark room. Okay, so this essentially a battery and this system, whatever we prepare, we fabricated here in Bangalore and we supplied such schools, it made a huge difference in a sort of the way they, the children were very excited about see the bright classrooms. And most of the children are studying, a teacher writes from a distance on a board where they sometimes they are not able to see the children who are sitting way behind because of the darkness of the room. And then simple a light bulb, glowing the light bulb, it made a huge difference in the way they receive the education, the way they are excited about going for a school. So indeed, then battery becomes extremely important component in these off-grid applications.
Now, it's an international project, so you've got lots of different countries as part of it. How do the energy requirements differ amongst those different countries that are part of the project?
Of course, there are requirements are very, very different. It depends upon, again, the population and depends upon, sort of the requirements and also the large number of industries we run, actually. I think the country like in India, we may not have a huge requirement for running a big mega industries. For a country like United Kingdom, perhaps the requirement for running these industries is maybe very, very high. So primarily the growing economy like India, where the necessity for the electricity as a scientist, I felt it's my social responsibility. And those are the areas where it is important to address. First of all, a rural electrification. So it's very, very important to connect those people, provide them necessary access for education. That is going to make a huge difference for the growth of a country. And essentially they have access for the internet, they have access for the electricity. So that makes a huge difference. So the requirements are very different. If you compare, country like, United Kingdom, if you compare the country like India, here the requirements are very different than the nature of the requirement. Of course, the big metro cities have a similar requirement compared to UK as well as India. But when you go to the remote locations in India, the requirements are very different. Okay, in a remote part of the India, the requirements are simple, a light, fan, okay, running their day-to-day life. Those requirements perhaps may be very different in UK and India.
Richard, you've been working with researchers in the UK and also Africa for a project in Botswana as well as Sierra Leone. What types of batteries are you using?
Yeah, so this project is funded by the Faraday Institution and the FCDO, and it's looking at using flow batteries and specifically the soluble lead flow battery for energy storage both in microgrid and load leveling applications for grids, but also as a standalone charging point for electric vehicles. So the idea behind using the soluble lead flow battery is that this system differs from conventional lead acid batteries in that in a lead acid battery that you'd find in an internal combustion engine powered car that's there for starting the engine, the electrolyte is sulfuric acid, and the active materials are not soluble in that electrolyte, and so are in a solid phase on the electrodes at all states of charge and discharge. With the soluble lead flow battery, the active material solvates in the discharge phase. So you're plating lead and lead dioxide during charge and dissolving it back into the electrolyte during discharge. And this means you can, to some degree, decouple the power and energy. So the energy storage is how much electrolyte, the electrolyte reservoir, and the power is determined by the number and size and configuration of the cells. The reason we're using this battery is that we're trying to fit into the existing recycling process for conventional vehicle lead acid batteries. So in terms of energy efficiency, it's not just about harvesting the energy, storing it, and then reusing it, but we're trying to look at the materials usage and the energy cost within the materials supply network as well. So what we're trying to do is take the electrolyte, or the material for the electrolyte, from partway through the recycling process, which saves both energy and financial cost, and using that part reprocessed material directly in our electrolyte for the soluble lead flow battery. And one of the advantages there in terms of the location is that there is a lead acid battery recycling plant in South Africa, which is in close proximity to the partners that we're working with. So the idea is to reduce the energy usage of supplying the raw materials for the batteries that we're putting together.
Now, these aren't the same sort of batteries that are used in smartphones or electric vehicles, for instance. Why not? Why aren't you using lithium-ion batteries, for instance?
Okay, so yeah, it's a very good point. So lithium ion has a great advantage that it is energy dense. So it's very light and small package, and stores a large amount of energy for that volume and weight, which is fantastic for applications that require lightweight storage, such as portable electronics, vehicles. But if you don't need to have that, or you're using a stationary battery, then the requirement for it to be energy dense reduces. You can use lower cost materials, and also more recyclable materials. So currently, although lithium-ion batteries can be recycled, there's still some way to go in terms of making that a really efficient process. Whereas with the soluble lead battery, the recycling process for lead materials is well known, and we can tap into that quite readily. But obviously, using lead and an aqueous electrolyte gives you a very heavy battery, which is more suited to stationary storage than portable storage, and again, that's why we're looking at using that as a recharging point for automotive batteries and electric vehicles in Sierra Leone, so that we can prioritize the use of lithium materials and lithium cells in the applications that really require those characteristics, and use lead in niche applications that doesn't require the high energy density.
And you've mentioned a few reasons, not least the sort of low cost. Is this one of the reasons why this type of battery is more suitable for applications off grid?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think that really we have to look at the cost, efficiency, and materials usage for energy storage. and find the niches for the particular chemistries that we have available to us, as well as developing new ones. And so yes, a cost driver, if we can bring the cost point of the soluble lead battery below that of lithium ion, that then helps in terms of just the economics of it, but also in terms of freeing up supply of lithium for the applications that really do need that high energy density.
Satish, I know that you also work on these lead acid flow cell batteries. I wondered what their performance is like under extreme environments, particularly say as in India, you can get very high temperatures. Do they still work well?
I think this is a sort of a ongoing research. I would not really claim at the moment because essentially in a flow battery, but the kind of flow battery we are working on, the flow viscosity of the electrolyte is very, very important. The flow rate is very, very important. When you change extreme conditions from very low temperature to the high temperature, I would certainly expect it will affect the performance of the battery. Essentially, the viscosity, the rate of the flow would certainly will affect. But at the moment, I think those are the major areas where the chemist can play a very important role to address these very, very key questions. You can, in my research group, we have been working on this aqueous as well as non-aqueous flow battery. So it has own merit and demerits. For example, aqueous flow battery works with a very limited window, but they are very robust and very safe. Whereas when you go to the non-aqueous flow battery, we can go for a very broad potential window, but the safety aspect is one of the major issue. So at the extreme conditions, it is certainly a sort of an ongoing research across the globe to address those questions. So I would not really say that it's indeed a battery is available to work in the extreme conditions, which is true in case of even lithium-ion batteries. When you go for extreme weather conditions, the performance will certainly will drop. So it's similarly, that is also true in case of a flow battery, where the performance will not be as we observe in the laboratory at ambient conditions. But when you start operating this battery at very adverse weather conditions, certainly I would expect the performance will drop. But there is an opportunity to address those questions.
So thinking about alternatives then, Shirley, what work have you been doing on sodium-ion batteries?
Certainly, yeah. So a lot of people probably didn't know sodium-ion batteries actually has a very long history, probably longer than that of lithiums. In the 1960s, led by a lot of European scientists, they made quite a lot of inroads for the development of intercalation compounds for sodium-ion batteries. I would say since 2010, this line of research is coming back a big time because, as Richard pointed out, that lithium, we would like to reserve it for electrification of the mobility, the vehicle fleet. And there is indeed enough lithium to electrify over 1 billion cars. I think that's the forecast that the scientific community agree on. However, if we predict, we foresee grid storage is going to take off and over the tipping point in the near future, then we will run into a shortage or supply issue for lithium, as well as all the other critical materials comes with the lithium-ion technologies. For example, the use of nickel, the use of cobalt. So in the chemistry for sodium intercalation materials, scientists have found many promising materials that does not contain these critical materials, and they are mostly using iron, manganese, magnesium, those metals that can form compounds with oxygen to host the sodium ions. So it's indeed quite exciting in the recent 10 years. And just last month, the Chinese tier 1 cell manufacturer CATL released their prototypes for the sodium ion batteries. So we are seeing a very exciting development in this line. As we all know, for deployment in the grid storage, you need to have the minimum gigawatt hour manufacturing capabilities, if not terawatt hour in the near future. So in terms of supply chains and the know-hows, I think sodium-ion batteries stand a very, very good chance because of the long history of research and development, as well as we have some tier one cell manufacturers are actually actively pursuing this line of technology.
And in terms of using available resources, we know there are only certain parts of the world, like Congo, for instance, where you can get lithium. Sodium is simply a lot more accessible.
That's right, Sue. I think I always thought philosophically why we were given so many sodium by the Mother Nature. You know, as human bodies, we cannot take too much sodium. It makes us high blood pressure, right? So philosophically, I always joke with my students, there must be a reason the Mother Nature gave us so much sodium. Let's figure out a way how to use this magic sodium. So I personally am very enthusiastic about sodium-ion batteries. We also started developing solid electrolyte for sodium battery technology, just like the lithium-ion counterpart. We believe that the future of the sodium batteries, we can actually make those very, very safe and long cycle. So we really hoping to reduce the storage cost so that in combination with solar and the wind, we will be economically viable and economically advantageous to people who adopt renewable as their first choice. So the storage cost for wind and solar has to come down, and I think have a wider portfolio of possibilities, include flowable lead and other flow batteries and the sodium ion. I think it's a good thing for our community that we don't have to select the winner so early, and we let all these technologies flourish and see which one eventually make the most sense for the society to adopt.
Well, talking about, using the abundance of materials that you've got around us, this is probably a good time to speak to Evvy, because Evvy mentioned in her introduction about nickel and it being, really abundant in Indonesia. So you're founder of this National Battery Research Institute. Tell me a little bit about these nickel-based batteries that you're working on, and others as well that are part of your research.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first that I would like to address about Indonesia first. As our president also want to contribute for the net zero emission, after the Paris Agreement. So they released the presidential decree number 55 2019. So this is the based on the accelerating of the electric vehicle. So this is one the implementation what we can do. And then why it should be about the electric vehicle? Because if we open the contribution of the carbon dioxide, about 20%, it's coming from the transportation, and also from the industry. And this has to be early to introduce to the society, about the electric vehicle. If we talk about the electric vehicle, battery is important. Okay, in the electric vehicle, 40 to 60% is the battery, and then the battery, it's the weight also is the battery, the cost is the battery. So the battery it play important role in the electric vehicle. Currently, the battery, the current battery used for the electric vehicle is based on the nickel-rich material. Okay. Sometimes we use the nickel mangan, cobalt, or we call NMC. Yeah. So this is the what is the in the battery now used for the EV, or sometimes they use nickel, cobalt, and alumina. But whatever the nickel-rich battery giving the very high specific energy. So this is what's important. Yeah, the higher specific energy. Finally, Indonesia realized how important to support this sustainable development goal with the battery electric vehicle and also with the nickel. And then we know that the nickel in Indonesia is the largest reserve in the world, 21 million ton. Yes, so the first, but we haven't exported so much. Yes, and then due to this reason, Indonesia also make the consortium, Indonesia Battery Consortium, which from the state-owned enterprise. So they want to start to making the supply chains from the mining. So they make also from the nickel ore to become the mangan. At first, nickel ore you have to make the HPAL smelter to become the MHP, mixed hydro precipitate, and then afterward you need to have the refinery plant to become the sulfate, yeah, nickel sulfate, cobalt sulfate, but of course you need the mangan sulfate, and then you have the precursor plant to make the NMC precursor, and then you add the lithium. So the lithium here also important, but only 7%. Yes, so if Indonesia have the nickel, mangan, and cobalt, we don't have yet the lithium, but we can still produce the battery. So, so this is the current situation in Indonesia. So they're going to have the manufacture and also contributing with collaborating with the, I think the CATL, LG, and or Hyundai. Or yeah, they're starting now growing in Indonesia. Indonesia is consists of 13,000 islands. Yes, so many. Yeah, there are many rural area. They are not the electricity. They don't have the electricity. So this the other side is about the grid. The solar panel, the off grid is very important. So there are two sides, the EV and also the off-grid. And recently, the Ministry of Energy Mineral Resources also launched about the incentive that you can, if, for example, your house have the 5,000 watt-hour, so you can put the solar panel with 100%. So it means that in the afternoon you can do you have the on-grid system, but in the evening you have you store the energy to the battery, and then you can have this the energy from the battery in the evening. So it's called a hybrid system. So it means that the battery also is very important. Yeah. So the two sides about the storage and also the EV. So I think, yeah.
So and there's also the collaboration being important. I know you were part of a recent workshop with the British Council, considering the roles that batteries play in Indonesia's renewable energy system, and obviously that's a very important part of what you do, isn't it? Is working with other researchers and chemists from other countries.
Right. So this is okay. One of the role of the National Battery Research Institute, I could say that this is I'm the founder of the National Battery Research Institute, but the co-founder of the National Battery Research is Professor Alan Drew from Queen Mary University of London. Okay, so we at the establishment of the NBRI, supported by Global Challenge Research Fund. Yes, from I think this is from UK government. So we are really concerned about this, about the clean energy, about the green energy, right? So the British Council give us the possibility of giving the climate challenge workshop. Yes, so. We apply for that program to British Council, and then we succeeded. And what happened is we tried to make several programs. There are actually there are 3 programs. The first is we try to give the challenge to young researchers to compete, to give the proposal, research proposal. Yes, and then we have to seek. This is between UK and Indonesia, and then so we find from more than 10 participants. Finally, we have the 3 winner. Yes, for this competition. Yeah, so we give the grant for they doing the research.
Let's move to another part of the world then, Evvy. Shirley, you mentioned about China recently, starting production of these sodium ion batteries, and you've been part of workshops with Chinese academics and industry. It sounds as though research and development there then is sort of quite a pace, perhaps, with sodium ion batteries compared to other parts of the world. Would that be the sort of right way of looking at it, that China's actually addressing its energy needs and with perhaps a future that might be a little bit more climate friendly?
Yeah, so Sue, I think the situation in China is quite a complex one. As all of us read in the news nowadays, that they are facing a coal shortage. As we are speaking, there was a lot of news regarding that. So China's grid, I would say, fundamentally very different from what we have in the Western world. They are nationalized grid, of course. For instance, if we talk about the comparison with the United States, we have lots of well-regulated private operations in the United States. So I would say that in terms of the battery development, China definitely in the last 20 years demonstrated its determination and the perseverance in kind of getting to the top tier 1 in terms of quality, quantity. So if we think about today, we have about 100 gigawatt factories. I would say more than 80% of these large productions are concentrated in Asia and in China, South Korea, and Japan. So if we look at the future development of battery production, I would say that Europe and North America, Canada, we are playing catch up right now. However, remember that 20 years ago, China also started from ground zero. They didn't have any gigawatt factories. So I think it is really the commitment from the government and industry at large to think about strategically how important it is to establish domestic battery production. I think this is a question beyond the discussions among the academic people. I think in what I have observed by hosting events between those information exchange and the communication between US and China scientists, what we want is quite clear, that we all want the world to be a better place. I think that's for sure that the goal for most of the scientists when we are exchanging information, how to enable great scale energy storage. But the execution eventually is really up to the government and the industry. So this is the part I'm super impressed by what the Chinese industry and the government were able to achieve in the duration of 20 years. And I certainly hope that in the United States, a similar level of accomplishment could be achieved.
Well, let's just move on then closer to home, because you're founding director of the Sustainable Power and Energy Center at your University of California, San Diego. What is its aim then, and how is that aim being achieved in terms of progress?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the SPEC Center, Sustainable Power and Energy Center, was built in 2015. I think when we first set up the center, we had the vision that we are hoping to do two things at first. The number one is really to feed the best talents to the industry, where the students have opportunity to work on industry relevant problems, because we have traditionally been doing quite well with Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, the federal government funded projects. However, to have the societal impact, we need to be in close contact with the industry. So the Spec Center was built as a virtual platform where cell manufacturers, materials company, car companies, utility companies, we can come together and talk about the energy storage challenge holistically. We just not look at just the chemistry. We have to think about from chemistry, how you scale, how you integrate, how you eventually being implemented in the industry. So I think that's a goal. I would be very happy to report that we did have a very nice ecosystem built in Spec Center, and our students, they kind of right now is the right timing for them to enter this line of work and build their career in the next 20, 30 years. The second very important thing is I think for Spec Centers really trying to look for ideas that are out of box, because as you know that if we just do lithium ion batteries, we will be playing catch up with Asian, right? And we don't want to do that. So we have to look for technologies that belongs next generation, and if we do scaling and integration and manufacturing, we would like to start with the next generation technologies. So a lot of these spec research was trying to push beyond the lithium ion technology and see what's next, and if we wanted to do large scale manufacturing, what should we choose? So we have been quite actively participating in some of the Battery 500 consortium, and the recycling program of the battery technologies. So all these are the examples of what the SPEC are trying to achieve.
Satish, you mentioned that right at the start about looking at organic semiconductor materials. Could you perhaps just explain a little bit more about that, and also in terms of, like Shirley said, how you're doing this out of the box thinking and where it works and where it's showing some promise?
Okay, so as you know, there is no single battery technology which is suitable for all kinds of applications. So we have to think, we have to explore the opportunities. For example, as Richard mentioned, lithium batteries are lightweight for optoelectronic devices applications. For example, flow battery is the application for the grid storage. So we have to really explore, as a scientist, we have to explore many more opportunities. While exploring that, conventionally, most of these battery electrodes, so far, whatever the development happens in the battery chemistry, conventionally the kind of material people have used are inorganic materials, oxide-based systems. But where are these organic-based systems? They are more like a sort of environmental friendly, and you can also, they are sort of, you can easily scale up, and we can also tune the properties from one end to the other end. So there is a plenty of opportunity for a chemist to address certain very, very fundamental issues in the area of a battery research. So if I given one example, suppose a non-aqueous flow battery versus aqueous flow battery. Aqueous flow battery works conventionally on water as one of the key component as electrolyte. But the potential window is very, very limited there. You cannot go beyond certain potential. Okay, but however, now if you use organics electrolytes or organic based electrolyte, you can broaden the potential window and you can store a lot more energy. So this is where this research is very, very exciting. Where can you really explore organic materials for as an electrode material organic material as an electrolyte in a battery research, and think beyond a chemistry which has not been practiced so far. So this is, as a scientist, as an academician, this gives me a platform to tune the properties of these materials and think over beyond a little bit out of box. So that's the reason I find it these organic materials are way forward. Going forward, people have to think beyond the conventional chemistry. For a future prospect of the battery research, it is very important to explore these materials.
Eddie and Richard, feel free to come in here, particularly with your different backgrounds in terms of the material science and the chemistry, and how it excites you to look at all these potentially different avenues that you can go down.
If I could dive in, I mean, I think it's the general area of battery research at the moment. I think it's almost unique in that you can almost picture any type of chemical problem or chemical expertise, and there's an application for it in understanding how batteries are going to work, whether it's sort of synthetic organic chemists making the kind of elaborate and beautiful materials that Satish is talking about. And that kind of brings in aspects of organic synthetic chemistry and polymer processing. Or on the other hand, you can have people who are expert at things like neutron scattering, as we've been hearing from Evvy, where this is really, you know, particle physicists and detector design is coming in there. And all of these things are going to feed into battery work. So sort of chemistries are at the center of it, but there's, you know, chemists on the edge of physicists, or on the edge of biology, or the end of photochemistry. They all have a role to feed in here, and I think that's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, if I can just add there as well, that as Still was saying, you know, you can start to put together a huge range of materials for energy storage. So you start off with the periodic table. So the chemist's favorite sheet of A4. You know, you've got the periodic table. You want to pick materials that have a potential difference that you can utilize within a battery to draw a voltage and a current. You can then go beyond that and start to, from that, still a large number of elements. You then start to mix into compounds and organics, and the range of materials that you can apply to energy storage becomes almost infinite in terms of changing the properties and tailoring the properties to maximize the operational window of particular electrolytes, to try and increase efficiency or increase power. So really, chemistry is fundamental to those development processes. But then beyond that, you've got chemistries that have been known for hundreds of years and been researched for decades, but the improvement in material science starts to enable those chemistries to be exploited. So it's coupling the fundamental chemistry and electrochemistry with the engineering and materials development to develop the new generation of energy storage systems.
And we've already heard from Satish in terms of how battery technologies are helping with education in terms of rural areas. Evvy, you mentioned the difference it will make with transport in Indonesia. What other areas are these new battery technologies where are they going to have the most impact, do you think? Who would like to start off with that?
Okay, well, yes, the most impact for the battery actually not only for the transportation but for the education. Yes, that's nowadays the people are using the internet online. Yes, as mentioned before that, and this is the main is the communication. Yes, you have the mobile phone. That's all this run by battery. So this is one one important thing, yeah, for the education. And then the other thing that's especially for the people in the rural area, they need not only light, but how can they start with the internet if they don't have the light, if they don't have the central? So the battery system now they're using also for the telecommunication. Yes, to put this to make the signal, and then so the people can have the internet without. So this is also another area. Battery telecommunication it's huge, it's demand. Yeah, they can put in a rural area, and also the other the microgrid system, and also for the for example to improve the quality of life for the people. In Indonesia, there's the fishermen. It's just sometimes they are really under poverty line. Yes, so they don't have even the electricity. So this is one example. If we can have them for this electrification, and then even if we talk to them and not only making the electric boat, but they say that what we need is the light. So we just give them the rechargeable light that they can go to the when they are fishing and in the evening, yes. And then yeah, this is very helpful.
They're really excellent examples there of the differences, the difference that battery technologies can make across so many areas. And as the COP conference is about to take place, and we've got you here from all the different parts of the world, it'd be nice to just hear from you one by one in terms of, ideally, what would you like to see agreed at the climate conference, or from governments in general on science in this particular area. Eddie, could we start with you?
I think, it's got to be ambitious, hasn't it? The whole area is ambitious, but I think some degree of leadership and international agreement has to come out of these things, which seem to be lacking a little bit in political debates in the last decade, certainly in the West. I think what I'd really like to see, and I have to try and remind myself to try and be optimistic, is if we think about how photovoltaics have changed in the last 20 years, it almost took the world by surprise. And that's because China decided to really press ahead on certain technology, and that made solar panels much cheaper and much more widely available. And I think we're not going to be able to have that kind of sudden step change in battery technology without very strong agreement between governments on rules, and things like in the UK we're talking about fading out and stopping entirely the sale of the internal combustion powered cars. I think that's going to require some degree of international collaboration on timescales for the commercial side of it to work. So that might be an easy one to pick on if people can come to a firm decision about internal combustion engines.
Satish.
Yeah, I think the primary, as a scientist, what I feel is, we have to make this world better place. I think we have to collectively come together. The challenges are, it's very, we have to, by 2050, if there is a zero carbon emission, that's our commitment. It requires a humongous efforts from across the globe. So we don't have to really, mark the boundaries. I think it is important to show a leadership. Collectively, we come together, address the question of the climate, because we eventually want to leave a better world for our future generation. So it is important, across the globe, all leaders should come together and promote the science which can address these important issues. Ideally, I want to see that.
Thank you. Shirley.
So when I started doing PhD in the year 2000, I was told I will change the world if the battery cost come down to $200 per kilowatt hour. We delivered within the 20 years, and the cost is now below $125 per kilowatt hour. Of course, the target has moved. Now I was given the target of $20 per kilowatt hour. So as a scientist, I would really like to say that we did not disappoint. We've delivered what the society has asked us to do. And I think it is time for the industry leaders and the politicians to do something about it. And we will continue to push the boundaries to achieve $20 per kilowatt hour target. And I think that when the scientists deliver that, I hope we run out of reasons why we are not at 100% renewables. I think that it is really, really important for the general public to understand that the scientific movement in terms of renewables and energy storage have made tremendous progress in the last 30 years. And I really pledge the industry leaders and the politicians to do something because we are running out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Evvy, your thoughts?
Okay, of course, that the leader make decision. Okay, based on the Paris Agreement, our president agreed to all the world, to the country, that Indonesia will be part of the reducing the carbon emission to become the net zero emission. That is a politics, but that is they make the leader make decision, but who will do is the scientists. We have to think, as Shirley said, that well, we have to do to make it happen. They said that about the local resources, they mentioned in the regulation about the targeting of the local resources, but the scientists will do how to make it. So I think that is the scientific or the scientist or the innovation, will contribute, will support this happening in the climate change area. Yeah, one thing I would say that the battery are a core technology to realize the energy transition. Yes, to make the not only the energy transition but also energy access to around the world. We can say that the electricity will shut down. It's okay, but we can still connecting with the mobile phone. But what happens if we shut down for one day the battery? So what happened? You cannot communicate. So for me, it is important, but the leader also must understand about this. And the battery is the core technology as the heart. You don't see it, but you don't want to it as the heart. You don't want it stop beating. So so we hope with the gathering of the leader, we can realizing the better world, the green world, not only for for all Indonesia, for all over the world. We make a better world for all the people. So I think and one thing I want to mention that we have to also educate the young generation, make the awareness of them, because they will implement for the future technology. Okay.
Thank you. Richard, last but not least.
And so energy use is part of society. That's not going to go away. So what I'd like to see is an awareness of the energy requirement for materials processing. So really want to see efficient use of resources. So and an associated cost that goes with that. Because really it's making sure that when you are using or storing energy and using materials, making products, these are done in as efficient as possible way.
Thank you. And it's been wonderful hearing about all the different international collaborations in this discussion today. My thanks to Dr. Richard Wills from the University of Southampton, Dr. Eddie Cussen from the University of Sheffield, Professor Satish Patel from the Indian Institute of Science, Professor Shirley Meng from the University of California, San Diego, and Professor Evvy Kartini from the National Nuclear Energy Agency of Indonesia. And thank you for watching. You can find more Royal Society of Chemistry discussions around the UN's COP26 programme on the RSC website at rsc.lai/COP and the numbers 26, or on their social media channels. So I hope you'll join me, Sue Nelson, and a host of expert guests for more episodes in this series as we explore chemistry's vital contribution to electrifying the planet's energy transition to net zero and powering new discoveries and innovations.
The chemical sciences are at the heart of sustainability solutions. Sustainability powered by chemistry.